talk about file compression. File compression is the ability for a file format to be able to make a file size smaller. Not necessarily resolution or pixel dimension. So if I were to look at an image and go to image size and I see, okay, I've got 5,304 pixels by 3,536 pixels. Right now this image is a camera raw image. It didn't have any compression. Okay, there was no file compression. Okay, so compression making the file size smaller in size. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Save as, I'm going to save it as just a regular Photoshop file here. I'm going to put it on my desktop and we're just going to call this yellow building PSD. I'm going to put it on my file. I'll put it on my desktop, okay? And if I were to look at this file size on my desktop and choose File Get Info, I see this is 55 megabytes file. I just choose File Get Info, or you could use Properties on a Windows machine, and I could see that that image, with it being about 5,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, it's about 55 megabytes. Now I'm going to save another version. File, Save As, and in this option, I'm going to go to JPEG, and I'm going to save this as a JPEG, and I'm going to save that on my desktop, and I'm going to choose Save. And when I choose Save, I get an option here. I get an option to make a choice between, large file size or small file size, or maximum quality or low quality. They're tied together. The smaller the file size, the smaller the space it's going to take on my computer hard drive, or that it will take to download if it's part of a website, or the amount of space that it might take up in an email. Not necessarily the pixel dimension, but the file size. So I can go with a small file size, but I'm going to get a really low quality. So you sacrifice one for the other. And as a photographer, as a designer, as somebody that's, sharing images, you make the choice as to what you're willing to live with quality-wise, as to what you're willing to live with file size wise. So let's go ahead and choose low quality. So I chose low quality. I'm going to close both of these images up, and I'm going to open them back up inside of Photoshop here. So I've got one that's a JPEG and one that isn't a JPEG, that was my PSD. So the PSD wasn't compressed. The yellow building JPEG was compressed. JPEG has compression. And as I jump back and forth between the two, I don't really notice any difference. And if I were to use a zoom and zoom in at 100%, I probably wouldn't notice much difference, even in the lower quality. But if I were to look at the file size on these two, File Get Info, and I see that the JPEG is only about a half a megabyte, 586K, and this Photoshop image that was the uncompressed version is 55 megabytes. So, almost 100 times bigger, right? So file size wise. But if I were to look at the pixel dimension, image size of my JPEG, 5,300 by 3,500, or this JPEG image size, they're the same pixel dimension, but much, much smaller in file size that's taking up on my disk. So what gives? Why wouldn't I always save as a JPEG? And oftentimes phones and other things always do, because compression works so well. However, if you're going to print or you're going to zoom in, particularly if you've gone to low quality, if I were to view this at 100%, I'm going to zoom all the windows here, and I'm going to zoom in on my JPEG image and compare that with my PSD image, you notice a little bit of a difference here. You notice some issues. There's some JPEG artifacting, some compression artifacting that's happened. Same thing I've had it to explain to me, like when you go on vacation. If you put all your clothes in a suitcase and you decide, you know what, I'm going to bring a same amount of clothes in a smaller suitcase, and you take them all out of this larger suitcase and you put them in a smaller suitcase, and you get to the other end and you've crammed them all in this smaller suitcase, you've brought along the same amount of stuff in a smaller package, but you might have gotten some wrinkled clothes at the end. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. We're getting some damage that happened to this image, or some information that's thrown away, that's given away, some lossy compression. Its images detail has been thrown away as I kind of look at it. And if I zoom in further and further and further, and if I were to look at these two together, arrange, let's look at them two up vertical. Let's look at both of these images. I was hoping to get both of these in the same spot here. Oh, there we go. So let's see. I thought I could zoom in and see both things in the same place there. Let's look at this this sign here. And as I zoom in and in and in, and I look at the Photoshop image on this side over here, as opposed to the JPEG image on this side, I see, boy, I've really lost some quality over here. But I've gained some space on my disk because I've saved it with compression. So just remember that when you're saving something as a JPEG or saving something that uses compression, you are sacrificing quality for file size and space on your disk, or the ability to transfer it across the network. And if you were to open a JPEG and make some changes and then resave it as a JPEG, open it again, resave it, each time you open it and each time you resave it, you're losing quality and losing quality and losing quality. So you really only want to save from your original once as a JPEG. And then if you need to make changes, you want to go back to your original image, make the changes, and then save as a JPEG. Because saving over and over and as a JPEG, you're losing quality, and losing quality each time. So that is compression.